Transmitting to you from Old Heart Radio.
Prepare to have your bones chilled and your hairs raised. It's the WacArnold's Brothers podcast.
Welcome home.
Computer, there we go. All right. Jumping right in. Motherfucking episode 55. I plead the fifth. Dude.
Oh my God.
Hey, it's either a wrestling reference or a Chappelle Show reference. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, the goddamn title of the show is a Chappelle Show reference. So
Exactly. If you didn't catch, this is the WacArnold's Brothers back with another episode. We got our part 2 in the 90s roundup today. But first off, there have been a couple of interesting things that have happened. We were talking briefly about it, but I wanted to see if you had watched the trailer for Halloween Ends and what your thoughts might be, just off the cuff.
Yeah, so it was one of those things where I knew it was going to happen eventually, but at first I had heard about it, right? So I went onto YouTube and I looked it up, and all I could find, and this happens like all the time, where just random fucking people have made their own trailer of cut together. So I was like, well, what the fuck? And then I read something where it was like, oh, the trailer drops like tonight. I'm already, regardless of what other people felt about Halloween Kills, I'm fucking stoked. Even more so after seeing the trailer and reading about the plot synopsis. One thing that's interesting to me though in the trailer is that there's a scene where it shows Michael going into a room and Laurie's there with a gun. So I don't know if you notice though, on his left hand is completely 100% fine, but that hand is missing fucking fingers. Yeah. So it's like, is that maybe just an error and it's like a shot, like reflected on a mirror, or is this not the actual Michael, or what's going on here?
Yeah, man, that's a good fucking point. Oh, yeah, I'm so interested in how they're gonna how they're gonna end it, really. There's that shot in the trailer.
Oh yeah.
So fucking tense, where looks like Michael has control over Laurie's hand. You hear the garbage disposal go on, and you get that shot of almost hand and disposal kind of situation. That shit always creeps me out. Oh man.
Oh yeah.
It was so good. I'm super looking forward to it. What did it say? October 14th, I think it drops.
I believe. I'm stoked that obviously due to the pandemic, not only was Kills delayed a year, but then it came out on Peacock, which was cool, but I'm stoked that this one's going to be in an actual theater and get to go see it in theaters, because that's honestly my preferred way to watch a new horror movie, is to go see it in the theater.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch it in the theater for sure. Just be in the darkness, be shocked by the fucking, I don't know. There's just nothing like being in the theater for a good movie. It's really hard to beat that feeling.
Yeah, I am so stoked. I'm waiting until Saturday to see it due to a friend's schedule, but I can't fucking wait to see Nope on Saturday. I am so hyped.
Hell yeah. That was the other one I was going to ask you about. I didn't know if you had seen it yet or not, because I know it just dropped. But yeah, I really want to, I'll probably try and do it on my days off next week, but I really want to try and catch that in the theater, because I've heard it's just fucking banging, dude. What do you expect?
Yeah.
Well, of course it's going to be. But yeah, that one looks fucking awesome. One of the things I'm interested by is that there's so much that looks like it happens in the daytime. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's daytime horror is it's hard to pull off. I feel like sometimes, nighttime horror is always like the spookiest. But that was fucking sick.
It's just one of those things where when it was first announced, it was just that teaser poster and you had no idea what was going on. And then the first trailer was really vague. And then they dropped the second trailer, which on one hand, you're like, wow, they might have just gave away too much there. But on the other hand, you're like, but maybe not, because you have absolutely still no fucking clue. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I know.
It's very intriguing.
Exactly. Like, it's like there's a very real mystery to like going into that movie. You're just like, what is this movie gonna be about, man? Like,
really,
that's fucking cool. But then lastly, the other thing I wanted to run by is, and I don't know if you were a fan of the property or not, but Rob Zombie has been in the process of making the Munsters reboot. I don't know if you caught the trailer for that.
The trailer, I'll watch anything that he does.
For sure.
And I'm interested by a Munsters reboot, but the trailer didn't really do much in the way of making me more interested. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. It didn't make me any more interested than like you just said, like the Rob Zombie's gonna draw me to it, but it looked bizarre. Like I was like,
it's not what I expected, but
it is not what I expected at fucking all. But I don't know. I was really stoked though when I read at first. I was like, Rob Zombie's doing a Munsters movie? What the fuck? I do think it's cool that there's a new Munsters property dropping like around the same time that because there's that Wednesday Addams show coming out. With Jenna Ortega, who is like on fire right now. So I'm really interested in that too. Yeah, that it will be fucking cool to check for sure. I don't know. There's interesting stuff going on all across with horror right now, but
totes.
We're focusing on a specific 90s time frame for the most of this episode, and that is 1993 through 1995. And as I think we both discovered, it was a little difficult to fully like flesh out some like, I don't know. Apparently it wasn't my favorite time period for movies.
No, because it's one of those things where, to my delight and surprise, when we did 90, 91, 92, there was a bunch of shit. What's interesting to me though is that we know that like the 90s isn't regarded as the best decade, and that until Scream comes around in 96, and as we've mentioned an endless amount of times, just revitalized the genre. It's when I was looking at these years that I got more of an idea of what they're talking about, because although there are some pretty solid picks, there's a bunch of shit that you just look at and you're like
yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's like, no, that's such a good way of looking at it. Like, it's perfect, because that really is. It's like, this is that lull period in the 90s where they were like, the fuck was going on? And like, we have some solid ones that we think are worth your salt, but it was just kind of an interesting go through. I think I'll just jump in with my first pick, because I don't know, why not? It's from 1993. It's a Guillermo del Toro movie called Cronos. And have you watched Cronos?
I'm going to be absolutely upfront and 100% honest. I've never heard of it. I've never seen it. All I know is that it's Del Toro's directorial debut.
Yeah.
It's the first of many movies that he is associated with Ron Perlman, and that the plot sounds absolutely bitchin'. But that's it. I don't know. I don't know anything about it.
It is bitchin', dude. It's so like, essentially, you know, you follow a character that discovers this like spider-like talisman thing that like basically makes him immortal. And over the course of the movie, there's really like strong allusion to like vampirism and stuff like that, you know, like the like the lust for blood starts, so on and so forth. And you know,
that's what I gathered from reading about it.
And it's like, it's just such a fucking cool movie, dude. Like you know, I think Del Toro definitely dives into more kind of every movie he's done is like kind of slow moving in a lot of ways, you know. And yeah, that's something I would say about this movie. It's kind of the pacing of it is pretty like, okay, where are we going? Let's get it done. Like, I know where this is headed, but it's also just really visually cool to look at. The acting's kind of indicative of the era, but it's Ron Perlman's character is also really great. The son of like basically the villain like of the movie, and he plays a character named Angel. And yeah, it's just, I don't know, like it's not my favorite Del Toro movie, but looking at the 93, I was like, I feel like this stands out above a lot of the stuff I was like reading, you know, looking at.
Is it one of those movies where you can watch it and it's like made apparent that it's a Del Toro work?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, like, you know, I think his pinnacle like signature work is probably Pan's Labyrinth. Like that's really where he like was given the legs to like create his world and his vision. And then
I was
further
blown away by that movie. Yeah,
Pan's Labyrinth is so fucking good. It's sad. But which is kind of like, you know, a lot of his work, including Kronos, that has like a lot of like elements where you're just sort of like, man, like this would fucking suck. Like you're torn between, you know, so many things. And I don't know, it is like it's kind of cool to catch like you mentioned at the top of this, you know, catch a director right off the cuff. And you know, you see them, it's like Wes Anderson, you see them like at first, and then you see them like really like just get more and more wrapped up in their vision along the way of their movies. And yeah, I mean, this movie was, it stood out. I think it got like, I was reading a little bit about it, and it was like mentioning that it was a nominee for like Mexico's like national film something or other, and it got rejected, I think probably because of like, you know, it was like a vampire movie essentially.
The subject matter. Yeah.
But I don't know, like I said, it's kind of like an I'd say it's like an artsy horror. You know. Yeah,
I can see that.
But and that's why I don't think it's necessarily for everybody. That's like, it's kind of like, I don't know, I think it's a cool movie, but I think you have to really be interested in watching. The Del Toro draws you to it, kind of like Rob Zombie theoretically should, you know, with the monsters. But
yeah.
Anyway, it's a solid pick if you have some time, for sure.
It's something that I'm definitely going to have to seek out and watch, because it was one of those things where I was kind of taken aback by the fact that this is his first movie and came out in '93. I'm kind of sitting here thinking when did he get prominent? Like, yeah, it's just interesting. So yeah, I need to check it out.
No, I agree. It's just like a really, I don't know. I think this movie can just slip by you under the guy, like, you know, when you look in his filmography, even though it is his first work. But
yeah.
So yeah. What's
I'm gonna have to seek it out. So before I jump into my first pick, I want to do some shout outs. So I want to shout out a movie that we actually covered, or sorry, no, we didn't. We have Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday.
Yeah.
Which
that cover always sucked me in. Like,
yeah, the cover's like the only thing it's got going for it, unfortunately.
yeah, fair enough.
We also have Ticks, which is a rather good creature feature with a fair amount of Clint Howard, and it also has Alfonso Ribeiro, which is interesting to see him in a horror movie.
Yeah.
Also, we had a couple King works. We have an adaptation of the Tommyknockers, an adaptation of Needful Things, and then also The Dark Half, which Romero directed.
The Dark Half. I don't know if I've seen that.
And I'll get into some more shout outs for that year, but my first pick, and it's kind of interesting that it's the first one we're talking about, but that's just the way it goes due to the year of release. But it's not necessarily a horror movie by any means, but it's definitely a very dark movie with some psychological horror in it, and some very dark themes. And any movie that teases a kid as a killer is always interesting in my eyes.
Yeah.
Not only that, but 1993's The Good Son.
Yeah, boy.
Is very interesting because, as it's well as JR would say, it's well documented that Macaulay Culkin was essentially a national treasure and was in all these feel-good comedic family romps. So to see him play this like darker role and just fucking knock it out of the park is great. And not only does he have a great performance, but so does a really young Elijah Wood. And it's just interesting to see the different career arcs these two would take. One was obviously way more popular as a child actor and kind of walked away, and then the other, got more of his popularity and fame as he got older.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember, due to the fact that I just mentioned about all the different roles Macaulay Culkin. I remember this is one of those movies that my parents didn't necessarily not let me watch, but they were more kind of like hesitant to because of being a fan of Macaulay Culkin's comedic works, and then being like, this is totally something different. So, temper your expectations.
Yeah, fair enough. It is, dude. It's like a sinister movie, man. Like, and you're right. Like Culkin, like I remember the first time I watched it, I was like, I didn't watch it till I was probably like in my 20s. Like I didn't know about it really, and then somebody told me, Macaulay Culkin and Elijah Wood, like in this movie, and I was like, all right, let's fucking watch it. And it gave me the creeps so bad. It's like they both turn in just wildly good performances, and it's I feel like it definitely is like a psychological horror for sure.
Yeah, it's directed by Joseph Rubin, who directed he away from horror, he directed Sleeping with the Enemy and Money Train, which is a ridiculous movie, but he also directed the original The Stepfather, which is another really good movie about the goings-ons of a family, and this character with these ulterior motives that you're like sort of suspicious of, but don't really know what they're capable of. So I feel like he's good with that dynamic.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. Stepfather was fucking creepy too, but that's kind of an interesting connect.
Because for people that aren't, because like you kind of mentioned, I think it's one of those movies that anytime I mention it, I feel like it's just kind of one of those movies that maybe went under the radar, or just get forgotten about. But for people that aren't aware, it's a movie about Elijah Wood's character is 12 years old. He recently just lost his mom, and his dad's going away on a business trip and goes and drops him off with his aunt and uncle, and he's reintroduced to some extended family that he hasn't seen in like 10 years. And he's introduced to his cousin, Henry, who's played by Macaulay Culkin, who's around his age, and then a younger cousin, Connie. And, you know, it's kind of one of those things where when you're young and you're introduced to somebody, you can become friends quite easily. You know, their friendship starts off, but then, you know, slowly but surely, Mark starts to see this dark side to Henry, and it kind of all really comes into the picture in this excellent scene where, and it's one of these things where Henry sees it as a prank, but he has this like life-size doll. And they go out on this bridge and drop into a fucking highway, highway, and it causes this collision and all this freeway to back up. And you know, you sometimes you hear stories of similar things with like a kid dropping a brick off of a bridge onto a car, and there's all this chaos that ensues. And so it's your first real picture of maybe some of the psychopathic tendencies he has. You know, it goes further from there. He tries to knock off his sister, and by making it look like an accident when they go ice skating. Jeez, there's a memorable scene where his mom, you know, it gets to the point where, and I apologize if I'm doing all the talking here, but I just, I'm really a big fan of this movie, but it gets to the point where Elijah Wood's character is kind of talking to his aunt about all these things, and she doesn't want to believe it. But it gets to the point where she finds this rubber duck in a shed, and this rubber duck happened to be a son of hers that had died when he had drowned in a bathtub. He had that rubber duck, and it had been missing since his death. And so she starts to maybe believe some of these things that are being said about him. Yeah. And then do you remember do you remember that? Do
you remember that scene? It's like the scene around the well when they're like circling each other while walking around the well. That's the scene that really took the movie to a turn for me, where like Macaulay Culkin was just, I don't know, just like so calm, but like also just came off as so menacing. And then that point, you're just like, fucking kid, dude, what else has he, like, what has he been up to? Like, what else has he done? You know, like, yeah. That movie's that seems like the one that really like creeped me out, man. Amongst other things. But.
And then it just has such a dark ending too. You know, this scene where Henry and his mom go for a walk, and she basically asks him if he killed Richard, her younger brother, and you know, just the way he answers the question, that's when she finally realizes that her son is evil. He ends up pushing her off of a fucking cliff, and he goes to pick up a rock to like finish the job, which is insane. Mark comes along and saves the day, but then like just the ending where Mark and Henry are both hanging from the edge. She's holding on to him, but her grip on her own son isn't that great. She saves Mark and lets her son fall to his death.
It's so fucking gnarly, dude. Like, what a mind fuck. Like, they're just like that shot of his body, but yeah, you're just like, dude, like, what a wild way to like pull an ending into that movie. Like, this is like, mom on the edge of literally dangling from the edge of a cliff. Which boy are you gonna choose?
Oh, I know. Fuck,
Like,
dude.
So insane. Yeah, that, I don't know. Like, I can't say it enough. Like, of a lot of them, out of a lot of the movies on this list that we put together for this episode, this is one near the, if not the top, the very top of the list. Like, where it's like, you should watch this movie if you haven't.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. Yeah, this movie, like, it definitely still holds up too.
Like, I agree.
I wonder if it's streaming on anything right now.
It's a good question. Do you have any shout outs from 93?
For 93? Well, we definitely got to reference Hocus Pocus. It's definitely not a horror movie per se, but it's a damn fucking great movie. And also, they recently just released a trailer for the sequel to that. They're bringing them back.
I need to watch that.
I haven't checked it out yet, but
that's one of those movies that just has such like an enduring legacy. So
exactly, it'll be hard to like pull it off, to be honest. And then there's I've watched it only once and I don't really remember too much about it, but I didn't realize it came out in 93 until like when I was scrolling looking at all these the other day. But the movie Body Bags, it's like an anthology that like brings it's one of those things that brings together a ton of people. It's mostly helmed by John Carpenter and Tobe Hooper. So, two names you should be familiar with if you've been listening. You have bits, with Robert Carradine. Like, it's just pretty fucking. I remember it being like
Stacy, yeah. Stacy Keach is in it.
And like
and Mark.
So what?
What were you gonna say?
Oh, well, yeah, and you're mentioning Mark Hamill like that. That was, I didn't want to cut that one off. Yeah, it's and Debbie Harry's in it too. So,
oh man,
and I believe Tom Arnold is involved. But you know what? Like, it's cool.
Yeah.
There's the all sorts of kind of fun elements to it. The first episode, or I don't know, what do you call them, like episode segment, thank you. Jeez, I was like what's the word? It's like centered around a gas station in Michael Myers' hometown. You know what I mean? It's like, which is pretty fucking cool. And like I said, I remember I watched it probably like 2 years ago or something like that, but it was just like such a low key, like I had never heard of this. And, like a lot of other anthology series, there's definitely like some fun to be had while watching it. So that's
yeah. I
just remember enjoying the ride. I can't remember too many specifics, but I did think that, when I was like trying to like rack my brain about it, I think the Robert Carradine as the serial killer was just really fucking like awesome. Like,
yeah, and so was the Mark Hamill segment, where he plays the baseball player who loses an eye and has it's such a good segment. Yeah, it's like you said, it's not one that gets mentioned that much, but yeah, similar to you, I stumbled upon it like a year or two ago and was pleasantly surprised by it.
Definitely. What else happened in 93? There's also so this is probably there's Return of the Living Dead 3 that happens here. All those movies are pretty fun. That one's pretty wild, if I recall correctly. And then what else? Just a bunch of frivolous movies,
there's a bunch of random sequels like Puppet Master 4.
Yeah. Another Amityville. Yep.
Maniac Cop 3.
Oh yeah,
man. There's some good ones though. There's Trauma, which is it's not one of Argento's best movies, but it has to do with the serial killer that likes to decapitate his victims. So I'm game.
Yeah, shit.
Also, in '93, a movie that one of my buddies recommended that we watch, and it's one of those shot on video movies. It's called Things.
Oh no! Shot on video. You know it's good.
Yeah. Also, Body Melt came out, which we almost talked about one episode, and then another one that's not really a horror movie, but due to themes of cannibalism, is Cannibal the Musical, which is an absolutely ridiculous fucking movie.
Yeah, that's from the South Park guys, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's over the top in the best way. Like that was one of those movies where I remember my buddy David Arms, like he discovered it in high school, and that was when South Park was like one of the most popular shows on TV. We watched it, and like it's one of those movies now where I've gotten older and my comedic tastes have changed. But at that time, when you're in middle school and you watch it, like you're on the floor laughing. It's so hilarious, you know. For
sure, yeah, dude, that's right. There's also this movie. I consider it kind of a ripoff of. Oh my god! Now I'm blanking on it. What's that serial killer movie? Oh my god! I can't believe I'm blanking on this right now. This is the serial killer movie with Woody Harrelson and.
Oh yeah, natural. You're talking about California.
Yeah. Don't
it's like yeah.
Doesn't it feel like it's kind of a ripoff of Natural Born Killers?
Absolutely.
Okay. Like
it even has Juliette Lewis in it. So
yeah, that's what I mean. Like I was like this there's something weird about this. If you've never seen Natural Born Killers, California can probably give you like a light version of the psychological mess of that movie. But either way, the other movie that I wanted to talk about from this year.
Yeah.
Is one that is kind of like a staple. Leprechaun,
totally.
Man. Motherfucking Leprechaun came out in 1993, and we can all feel better for it. Like Warwick Davis as the fucking Leprechaun. Give me it. Jennifer Aniston in her first movie. Wild that this is the first movie that Jennifer Aniston was in, if you think about it.
It is wild because
it's such a fucking ridiculous movie.
I obviously I probably didn't see this movie until I didn't see this movie until her fame from Friends had come out, so it's real interesting to go back and watch it and you know what I mean, and see her humble beginnings.
That's what I mean, man. Like it's just ridiculous. So and she plays like this classic like city girl sent out to the farm situation. And the
classic fish out of water situation.
But like this movie has some fun deaths. It has some like ridiculous lines. Warwick Davis is like equally hilarious and menacing as the Leprechaun, and like it spawns so much.
It's definitely more like as they go on, it's almost kind of like the trajectory of Freddy Krueger, where as he got on, they focus less on the menacing and more on the comedy. And it's, you could say the very, like, especially Leprechaun 3, where he's like all these stupid fucking limericks, but he's played more for like, except for the go-kart scene, but he's played more for like creepy in this one, and I appreciate that for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's like I said, it's just one, like it's one of those, it's like just always fun to watch if somebody puts it on, you know what I mean? I don't know if I think this is probably my favorite Leprechaun movie, just because of like the overall, like you just kind of like said, like the overall just sort of like it was meant to be kind of spooky, you know. The other ones get like more endearing, like because of the comedy, but for completely different reasons. Like I just really think that like Warwick Davis in this role is just, he had to have had so much fun playing that.
Without a doubt.
You know what I mean? Like it's ridiculous, but it's obviously it's about a leprechaun who needs his gold back. So
he needs his gold, which is very much a reoccurring theme. But I will say this is that it's another one of those instances where when they were making it, I don't think they realized what the outcome was going to be in the sense that I don't think they foresaw this movie having 6-7 different movies in the franchise.
Oh yeah.
Obviously it wasn't the franchise ended up after this one, it was like a straight to home video, so it wasn't the most successful, but that it's a very like you mentioned, it's achieved cult icon status. It's an endearing franchise. So I don't think they knew what they were doing necessarily, that it was going to be as big of a hit as it was.
No, I really don't think so either. And it definitely is a well-earned cult following. But there's there's all sorts of ridiculous stuff that happens in this movie where it's searching through the farm and taking the time to shine all the shoes and shit like that.
Oh my god.
Just ridiculous. Crap like that.
It's a little over the top, but What another interesting thing about it is directed by this guy named Mark Jones, who really didn't do much, but he directed a movie called Rumpelstiltskin, which is kind of like in a similar vein, but it's actually a really solid movie that doesn't get enough appreciation, so you should go watch it. But it's very interesting to me to see that two of the main films on his filmography are Leprechaun and Rumpelstiltskin.
Interesting. Yeah, that is kind of funny. Rumpelstiltskin. In kind of reading about this movie, there's I found it said that some of this movie was filmed at the same place where Little House of the Prairie and The Waltons, those two TV shows, were shot. And apparently a quote from Davis, when asked about kind of filming and whatnot, he said it felt a little blasphemous filming on several the violent scenes on that set, I guess. But
that's hilarious.
The other cool thing is Warwick does his own stunts in this movie, so he's it's all him, which is kind of cool. And I think it's really funny that the thing that can defeat the leprechaun is a 4-leaf clover. Jesus. I love it. It's could they have been more on the nose with Irish terminology? Really, that's what they and just the way he gets dispatched. She puts a fucking 4-leaf clover on a piece of bubble gum and blows it into his mouth, and he just starts melting. Yeah. And then the skeleton out of the well.
Oh yeah, that's a great. Where's me gold?
Oh, fucking great. Yeah, dude, Leprechaun is.
Yeah, say what you want about the movie, but the fact that Warwick Davis got paid to fucking just have a blast playing this role, more power to him.
Dude, for real though. Yeah, it's definitely. I feel it should be in the cycle if you're a horror fan. Always keep a Leprechaun movie nearby because they're fucking great. Do you have any final shout outs for 93?
I do. I have 3 more before we jump into 94. So we have couple of low budget. We have Doll Man versus Demonic Toys, which brings together, it's a Charles Band, it's a Full Moon Pictures production, so that really tells you all you need to know about it. There's also Carnosaur, which, yeah. And then there's a really interesting movie that came out in '93. It's another killer dog movie, but it's actually surprisingly solid, called Man's Best Friend. It's actually one of those movies that when we were looking at this, I was like, dude, I haven't seen that in forever, and I really want to watch that now.
Dude, I feel like I have seen this. I'm looking at like the poster and everything, and it's
the cover.
Yeah. Dude,
Yeah.
like that's one of those, dog turns on you. That's a fucking hard movie, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that one has it says it has Lance Henriksen in it. So, staple.
I love me some Lance. Yeah. So going into 1994, I feel like we're really more like 95 heavy. Like we each have a pick in 94. So I just want to do a couple shout outs before I jump into my next movie.
For sure.
So 94, we have Ghoulies 4, which is easily the worst movie in the Ghoulies franchise. And it's one of those movies where when you watch it, it's so wild because in the first 3, it's really good puppet work. But in this one, it's small people in suits, and it's terrible. It's akin to what the Ninja Turtles looked like in the first 2 movies compared to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. It's like that bad of
God, really?
That bad of a drop off, bro.
That's weird, man.
Because I feel like I've gone on record before where Ghoulies and Ghoulies 2 are a huge guilty pleasure of mine. We also have what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say we just because we just talked about it, we're quick turnaround. 94 holds Leprechaun 2, so
yep. And then 95 has Leprechaun 3, which we've talked about at length.
That one's
that's great. A quick turnaround.
It's a quick turnaround with those movies.
94 also has the third movie in John Carpenter's Apocalypse trilogy, In the Mouth of Madness, which in my opinion is probably the weakest of the 3, but it's still really solid, and I absolutely will watch anything with Sam Neill in it. So
I was just gonna say Sam Neill, with John Carpenter, watch it. You have to watch it. We also had, I don't know if this is it's like an intriguing movie. I don't think Mary Shelley's Frankenstein with Robert De Niro was such a wild pick. I think they were really striving for the success of Dracula, by doing this movie. And I just don't think it had the same oomph as Gary Oldman's Dracula, for sure. But
no.
There's also what was it? Phantasm 3. So I think it's just interesting to I just think it's interesting to note that that's still going. Phantasm's a cool property if you actually get into it.
Oh my god, yeah. I just recently got into it, and it was one of those things where it was like, I knew what it's one of those things where for years I heard people talking about it, and I was like, I finally saw the first 3, and I was like, well, I knew what I was missing this whole time, because it's just such an awesome concept.
Yeah. What else?
We also have, there's a couple more sequels. We have Pumpkinhead 2, which is interesting in its own right. We also have Puppet Master 5. So I'm gonna save a couple more shout outs until we do each of our picks for this year, but I do want to do this really quick. So there's a shout out that I'm not going to say the name of. I'm not going to say the name of it for a reason, and we've never done this before, but it's a movie that we're actually going to review next. And I want to give a small clue to anyone that's listening that maybe they might be able to figure out ahead of time. So this movie was filmed as a horror movie, but shortly before it was released, the people that made the movie decided that they wanted to aim it more at a kid-friendly audience. So they took all the gore out and released it. And a couple of years ago, one of the big like horror releasing companies restored the movie to its and released the gore cut. And I can't fucking wait to talk about it. But that's just a little clue.
Little teaser.
But, yeah, but my next pick is I've gone on record talking about this might be my favorite movie in the Nightmare on Elm Street series, and it's also a movie that when you watch it, you can see kind of some of the beginnings of where Wes Craven went with Scream. Because Wes Craven's New Nightmare did something that hadn't really been done at the time and took this awesome meta approach to a long-running franchise that he himself had started and walked away from. And to me, the craziest thing about it is he went for something that really could have went wrong, and he pulled it off in the best of the ways. And I don't know if you could do that with other horror franchises.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a recent convert to this movie because I remember like for some reason the first time I watched it, it didn't stick. But when I watched it like not that long ago, after you were like, dude, it's such a good movie. Like it really hits, man. It's like a fucking wild concept, you know. And you're right. Like that's such an interesting thought like where, you know, you can connect this to Scream because of that sort of meta like element in a way where, and I couldn't agree with you more. Like it's kind of, I didn't even think about it till just now, and it makes sense, you know, being like this like self-aware thing where horror movies have a life of their own in society, you know, like, yeah, it's pretty fucking cool.
I just think it's cool to, like I mentioned, that he created the franchise, directed the very first movie, stepped away. All these different sequels came out to varying success. And just the fact that he came back, you know, 6 movies later to direct another entry in it that was so drastically different. And what's cool about it is that he was able to finally depict Freddy in a way that he originally intended. You know, it was more menacing, a lot creepier, just the subtle like changes to his look. You know, there's barely any comedy. He's more played as this very creepy, sadistic entity, and it's to the benefit, in my opinion.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, yeah, it's, I mean, and I like a lot. I'm so entertained by most of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, you know. But you're right. Like this actually is like, it's kind of, that's a like really kind of another great point about it, dude. Where it's like Wes Craven came in and was finally able to like portray the character how he had, you know, intended in a lot of ways, and you know, and what he did, you know, by playing off of the idea that the character got so popular, it was just like, I don't know, it was just brilliant, really. Like,
absolutely.
Yeah, and Robert Englund does a fucking bang up job in this movie, you know. Yeah.
So does Heather Langenkamp.
Fair. Yeah, she does awesome too, which is also kind of, I mean, it's also cool that she's brought back in this interesting way. as like the actress rather than the character, but is known for the character. So she's always trying to shake the character, and then she becomes the character basically, like in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's so great.
Yeah, it's fucking crazy. I couldn't.
But yeah,
I can't speak to it enough. Like it just, you should rewatch it if you've watched it and dismissed it, because it's worth it. Like,
yeah, it's one of those things where it was really cool to hear you say that after giving it a rewatch and looking at it under a different light, and being able to get you to look at it in a different light and appreciate it in a way that you hadn't before, because it is a super strong movie. And like I said, it has a lot of things that when he went on to direct Scream, which made that movie so successful. And I think part of that is because with Scream, he was able to complete something completely new, where you didn't have any previous attachment to these characters.
Yeah.
But dude, I mean, we're obviously going to talk about Scream in the next episode. It's one of my favorite horror movies, and in my opinion, one of the best horror movies ever made. And once again, it's wild how Craven was able to revitalize his career and have another fucking rollicking smash hit. You know what I mean? Like, Jesus criminy.
Dude, for real though, Craven pulled off another one. It's just definitely, like I said, definitely worth watching. One of the few movies out of '94 that are kind of really worth the time. And I guess I'll just I'm gonna get my pick out of the way, because we got some shout outs to do also, but just getting, it's not necessarily, I wouldn't call it like a full on horror, it's horror light nowadays. But 1994's Interview with a Vampire, based on the Anne Rice work, is like a really cool movie. I've never actually like dug into reading any of Anne Rice's like vampire books, but apparently, and this is like the neat thing, it sounds like it's like wildly deep. Like she built like a really solid world,
that's what I've heard.
And so I'm kind of like, as an adult, I'm kind of like intrigued about it. But Interview with the Vampire, it's kind of interesting because it takes two really big stars at the time, and makes them like kind of like, I don't know, it just makes them vampires, makes them do these like, sort of like, you kind of follow this story from Brad Pitt's Vampire, where he's like regaling Christian Slater, his character, about like his life, and you kind of travel through time with him from the point he gets turned by Tom Cruise. I'm not like doing the character names justice, but Lestat, yes, because Lestat is the main character that you follow in the other Anne Rice movie that was made many moons later, Queen of the Damned, and that movie's off the fucking rails, if you ask me. Like that,
but in a good way though. In a good way though.
It's a fucking wild movie. Because but anyway, but this movie, it's the best performance of all in this movie is probably Kirsten Dunst.
She's incredible.
She is so incredible in this movie, and what a mind fuck her character must go through for the bulk of that movie, where it's like, I'm immortal, I'm this many years old, but I'm just trapped in my child body, and that's
I'm a 12-year-old.
Fuck.
This movie though is we've talked about some of our favorite vampire movies, and what I love about vampire movies is how a different vampire movie can have a complete different look and feel and aesthetic to it from another one. And this is just another one of those movies that the set pieces, the locations, the setting, it's a beautiful fucking movie. And it is just an absolute treasure to look at.
Yeah. That I do.
That's one of my favorite things.
That I do agree with, man. It's like it really puts you in the world that they're trying, that they're describing, like, because of how everything looks, and like it's meticulous, like just so well done. I think that, like, I mean, my biggest beef with this, and this is just my biggest beef with any movie that features him, it's Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is the weak link in this movie, if you ask me, because his performance is just. I don't know. I think that he was in it because of the star power, and I don't think he was in it because he was the best actor for the job.
It's really interesting you say that, because I just was like, I'm not one of those people that reads like things from social media about like movie stars or this or that, but there's this like Mickey Rourke interview where he talked about how he doesn't really have respect for Tom Cruise, because Tom Cruise just plays the same fucking role in every movie.
Yeah, it's the truth. Though, man. Anyway,
he's the weakest link, because Brad Pitt, and no matter what he is, you're drawn to him.
Well,
as you mentioned,
his character has this, like, the human vulnerability that like sucks you into the situation, where it's the ongoing angst of like should I be giving into my vampiric needs or not? And that's always the question. I think, for people, it's like, would I fucking like go out there and kill, like.
Well, that's one of my favorite aspects of this movie, is all the trauma that every character has, because he before he gets turned, he is dealing with the loss of his wife and his unborn child. And then we mentioned Claudia, Kirsten Dunst's character, is dealing with being, like you mentioned, immortal, but essentially a 12-year-old in an adult woman's body. I have no idea what the hell that would be like. And then by the end of the movie, Brad Pitt's character, and I'm talking about before like the last scene of the movie, but near the end of the movie, when you're reintroduced to him, he's just like living in squalor, and you can tell that he has all this guilt over not only turning Claudia, but turning Brad Pitt's character himself. Like, he just has all this guilt over just living for fucking ever, and all these things he did that he regrets. So, and you don't think about that when you think about vampires. You're not going to sit there and think about the trauma they must have. You know what I mean? It's interesting.
Yeah, no, exactly. It gives you this like really different look into like, the life of a vampire than I think people commonly think about. And there's like you were saying, though, there's all sorts of really cool things about this. The whole theater of the vampires. Like, that shit is so fucking wild with like Antonio Banderas' character. And just like, so I don't know. There's some really beautiful parts of this movie visually, and there's some really interesting just I don't know. It's worth. I mean, I feel like it's definitely worth watching, which is why I wanted to talk about it. But it's not really like a spooky movie.
Just the plot and premise alone too. It's very unique, and there's upon watching it, you're reminded why it's like regarded as one of the best spoken about in the list of like best vampire movies of all time. Yeah,
for sure. And the ending is pretty classic,
Yeah.
Good jump scare ending with Lestat making a comeback.
It's solid, especially because it's interesting because in the scene before, the reporter had asked to be turned, but wasn't. And then he it's one of those things where you kind of, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, exactly, man. Dude, for real. All right. You got any other shout outs for the 94?
Yeah, before we jump into 95, I got a couple more. So we have another Stephen King adaptation, The Stand. And then here's the case. So I have two shout outs actually. So one came out in 94 and one came out in 95, but they're very similar premise. So there's one in 94 that came out called Skeeter. That's about mutated mosquitoes.
Of course.
And then there's one in 95 that came out called Mosquito, which actually just got put on Shudder, and I watched like 3/4 of it last night before falling asleep. But it's just hilarious that we recently watched Popcorn, and the movie within a movie is about this fucking gigantic killer mosquito.
Yeah, dude, that's fucking awesome. I was wondering if there has to be like some, this has to be a thing of giant insects and everything, but now here it is, the Skeeter movies. And I like that there's one back to back, like 94 and 95. Like it was a hot topic. Like people were like, no, okay, the giant mosquito, it's fucking terrifying, trust me. How was the part of the movie that you watched though?
I mean, it was low budget, but I will say this, like, but the parts with the mosquito that were CGI were really, really bad, but the parts with the mosquito that were practical effects were awesome. So okay. I'll say that.
Fuck yeah, I'll have to check it out. No, it's on Shudder.
My last shout out for 1994 is Night of the Demons 2. It's not as good as the first one, but it's still, it's still an entertaining movie that, you could find worse ways to spend some time.
I don't know if I've seen Night of the Demons 2. Oh man.
What about you? You got any last
that looks cool.
Shout outs for 1994?
Honestly, not really, man. 94 was kind of a tough year for me going through it. I did when looking at stuff, there was some that I discovered I wanted to check out. There, like the movie, it's Brain Scan was the one with Eddie Furlong. It's like it seems like a kind of, I don't know, mind fuck sort of movie. Yeah. And
I've
then
never seen it.
That's what I mean. Like there's just there's mostly movies in here that I was kind of like, oh man, I don't know. There's a movie called Hellbound that features Chuck Norris, and it's listed as a supernatural thriller. So,
what?
woot. Yeah. But you mentioned The Stand. There's one other Stephen King property that got made. It was a made for TV series, I think technically, but it was The Kingdom. And I didn't realize this until just now. The director Lars von Trier is attached to it. That dude's made some insane fucking movies, man.
Yeah, he has.
Disturbing fucking movies.
Yeah, I haven't watched a lot of his work, but probably a year ago, I watched one of his more recent movies, The House That Jack Built, and it's super good.
Yeah, dude, for real, man. Controversial motherfucker, though, really.
Oh, yeah.
Which is interesting. But yeah, I mean, some of the shout outs you mentioned, I was like, dang, okay, maybe I'll have to check that out. But yeah, it was 94 is probably the hardest year of them all for me. 95 was a little bit better for sure.
Yeah. We're definitely, we each have two more, and then there's quite a lot of more solid movies that came out that we'll touch on. So
for sure, just to break the ice, so to speak, with 95, a movie that we did touch on in a separate episode. Ice Cream Man came out. Ice Cream Man. Oh
my God! What a way! I love
it. We just have to remind the listeners that Ice Cream Man is such a fucking good movie. So you got to go watch it. It's 95 classic.
And speaking of, it's so entertaining. Anything, I'm a sucker for anything with Clint Howard in it.
Yeah, boy.
Especially where he's like it's a Clint Howard vehicle, not just like a cameo.
Yeah.
Another cold related movie that I'm seeing here that came out in '95, which is probably pretty fucking bad. It's called Frostbite: Wrath of the Wendigo.
Oh God. Wrath of the Wendigo. Yeah, dude. Frostbite.
Mm-hmm.
It says the filmed in Michigan. I wonder, is that like, oh my God, is it a Bigfoot movie? Is it? I mean, it's got to be like, if it's a Wendigo, it's essentially Bigfoot, right? I was just gonna say, it's like, I'm always on the quest for the best like Bigfoot horror movie. There's not very many good ones.
There's not. No, they're mostly like sci-fi channel-esque,
Yeah.
So, but a movie that's not. Yeah. Well, like what?
What do you? Oh, well, like in terms of Bigfoot movies, I don't know. I was talking about shout out.
I thought you were talking about. Yeah, that's what I.
I thought we have to shout out Candyman 2, Farewell to the Flesh.
Yeah. It's a pretty solid sequel.
It's not bad. It's not. The first one definitely worth watching, for sure. Though I'll say that. The second one, it's cool.
The first one's obviously an undisputed classic.
Yeah.
Well, we got some more sequels in '95. We have Carnosaur 2. Which is even worse than the first one. And then we have Children of the Corn 3 Urban Harvest. Which
we forgot to mention that last 94 had the number sequel, the number 2. But Urban Harvest? Oh my gosh.
I think I'm pretty positive it's the third one, and it's actually pretty interesting where it's like in a more of a city setting, and this like in a back alley, like a row of corn like just shows up. It's interesting.
So it kind of gets a little more supernatural.
That's one of those where the first one is and when I say loosely, I mean loosely. It's loosely based off of a Stephen King short story. So it's still wild to me that they went and made like 7 different sequels out of that.
Yeah, man. Like, I mean, the first one is definitely like, I mean, it's cool. And it's definitely like fun, like a good watch. But yeah, it just, I'm with you. Like, it's one of those properties where I was just like, I honestly was not really ever interested in the sequels. And in terms of like I've got to follow the story,
right, which is fair.
Yeah, but it is kind of that's wild that they make so many. I want to jump
into my my next pick.
What you got?
Because it is a good movie, and it's one of those movies that I have a lot of nostalgia tied to. I'm a lifelong Tales from the Crypt fan, especially tracking down old EC comics. But this is one of those movies that I remember when I was younger, and living in Missouri. It was around the same time I had these friends that were older brothers, and they introduced me to From Dusk Till Dawn, which is still one of my favorite horror movies. But they also introduced me to Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight, which is one of those movies that, again, I wish more people would watch and gain an appreciation for it, because it's one of those movies that has a lot of original ideas, a lot of cool ideas, a lot of solid performances. There's some bad CGI because it was around that time, but the practical effects are fucking are just like chef's kiss. But yeah, it's just everything about this. It's directed by Ernest Dickerson, who has a really interesting filmography. He directed Surviving the Game, which
Oh shit!
if people don't know, part of it was filmed in Wenatchee.
Yeah, boy.
You know, Ice-T, part of it was filmed in
Yeah,
Wenatchee.
man.
He also directed
That's
a
wild.
comedy with Damon Wayans and Adam Sandler called Bulletproof.
Oh shit! Yeah.
Yeah. But then he directed another lesser recognized but still pretty solid and has a cult following horror movie, Bones, starring Snoop Dogg, which is another really cool fucking concept.
Dude, that's wild. What a wild spread.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And was this, I so to you, was this probably one of the more standout Tales from the Crypt works, or because this was a full movie, whereas because there ended up being 3 of them. There ended up being Tales from the there's Demon Knight. Later in the 90s there was Bordello of Blood, which is pretty solid, and then I think it was 2001 they had another one that was straight to DVD called Initiation, and it's not as good. But yeah, both this and Bordello of Blood came out in the 90s, around the peak time when Tales from the Crypt on HBO was still super popular. Yeah. And I think it was one of those things where they tried to get it to more of an audience, where people were really into Tales from the Crypt, but not everybody had HBO. You know what I mean? Yeah, they're having to. I mean, but that was the nature of it back then. Absolutely, but just some of the names in the cast, we have Billy Zane plays the collector. Billy Zane. William Sadler plays the other main character, who's in this eternal conflict with a collector by the name of Breaker. Jada Pinkett Smith, Thomas Hayden Church. And Dick Miller plays a role as Uncle Willie, this drunk. Uncle Willie. Dick Miller is just he needs no introduction, man. He is just great. He's normally associated with Joe Dante, but just dude. I mean, when was the last time you watched this movie? Oh man, it's been a while. I think it's on streaming somewhere. I think because I feel like I just saw it, and it reminded me before we were even doing this. I was like, "Fuck, dude, I want to rewatch that." I haven't gotten around to it yet. Probably do it tonight, honestly, because we're talking about it. But it's been a little while. I just remember it being fucking awesome. And so I'm looking forward. But when's the last time you watched this movie? They put it on Shudder a couple of months ago. Yeah, that's and it's one of those movies. It's another one of those movies where. If I turn on streaming and it's there, I'm gonna watch it. Okay. Because just the plot, it's just this wild plot. It's just this wild plot of you just get dumped into this story on this New Mexico highway with the collector and the breaker, and you can just tell that they have some form of rivalry going on. This wild scene happens where they crash cars into each other. Dick Miller's character takes Breaker to a boarding house that's at a old rundown church, while the collector hitches a ride with 2 cops. They end up meeting at the boarding house, and it's one of those situations where when the collector gets there, he tries being this man has some of my property and he's not to be trusted, when it's obviously the other way around. And just the first kill where the collector kills this cop by just punching his fucking fist through his skull. It's just I remember whammo. That. Yeah, dude. From there, it just gets turned to 100, and there's just all kinds of crazy demons. The collector has this power where he can he gets in your head and makes you see things. With Dick Miller's character, for example, he gets in his head and makes him think that he's in this bar drinking beer with all these scantily clad women and just kind of a Dick Miller it's dream. Great.
But yeah, there's just some like wild fucking effects, wild creatures, wild deaths. And it gets to this point near the end where, because at one point, Breaker explains to these group of people that this talisman that he has, in that a long time ago when God created Earth, that there was these 7 keys, these 7 demons, and he created light to scatter them around, and that this talisman holds the blood of Christ, and that whoever holds it is immortal, but whenever they die, they pass it on and they fill it up. They fill up their blood and they pass it to a new person who has to be the new collector. And that ends up happening where this scene happens where this child that is possessed mortally wounds Breaker, and then gets killed in grand fashion, where he gets thrown out this window where there's like a seal and he just explodes.
Oh my God.
Dude, yeah, go watch it tonight. But yeah, so he passes, William Sadler's character Breaker passes on the artifact to Jada Pinkett Smith, and she has a final showdown with the collector. Ends up killing him, to where as he's dying he turns into his demon form, and then it has one of those real awesome and effective and this is much so the time that this movie came out, but one of those twist endings where it shows her hopping on a bus. She pours a seal to the steps, and at the next bus stop you see this guy that's wearing an identical to what the collector was wearing, and has a briefcase similar to him, and he mentions to the bus driver, I'll get on at the next bus. Jada Pinkett Smith notices him, and you see, here's the next incarnation of this, the battle between these two. It's super solid.
That's cool. Yeah, damn, dude. That was, I don't know. I'll have to rewatch it. I feel like I'm blanking on too much, but I do, dude. I remember the fucking head punch, like that. That's one of those moments that like stays with you. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, dude. It's amazing.
Oh man. Yeah.
So I gotta cut. What's up?
Oh no, I was gonna say what other shout outs do you have?
Well, I want to save a couple for when we're done talking about movies in general, but I just want to do 2 more shout outs before you jump into your next movie. So, and I almost picked this one, but 1995 gave us Castle Freak, which is another collaboration between Stuart Gordon, Jeffrey Combs, and Barbara Crampton. And it's one of those things where From Beyond, The Reanimator, and this are 3 completely, totally different movies. But they're all entertaining. And this isn't my favorite of the 3, but it's still really solid.
Dude, I'm gonna have to fucking find this movie.
Yeah, just those 3 together, dude. It's entertaining, and I love all 3 of those names. So.
That's sick. That sounds like it'd be really fucking cool. And there's a couple other like random, like we mentioned, Leprechaun 3 came out. But there's also a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie from this year. Jesus. The Next Generation, starring Renee Zellweger and and Matthew McConaughey. And there's another, and this is like a wild card movie, if you ask me, but Vampire in Brooklyn with Eddie Murphy. It came out this year. That's another Wes Craven. I always forget that that's a fucking Craven movie, dude. It throws me off. It throws me for a loop every time I look at it. I'm just like, all right. Because I mean, just to be honest, like, I feel like you just can't take. I mean, Eddie Murphy. It's meant to be a comedic at times, but it definitely you're just like, I can't. Eddie Murphy's not very scary to me in any way, even if he's trying to be menacing. But it's still there.
Yeah, I feel like I haven't seen that movie since I was younger, so I mean, maybe I need to reach out and watch that.
Yeah.
But what's your next pick?
Let's dive into Species. Species is kind of like
species.
It's like a sci-fi horror. I remember, to be honest, I remember first being drawn to this because like there was like a really pretty lady on the cover, and I was like, "What's this fucking movie about?" And then you find out that that's like built into the movie, where in a lot of aspects. But it's such a mind fuck of a movie where it's like, people discover potential alien life, and then people discover, get given alien DNA to fucking, build into it, what's the word? To like splice. God damn it. Thank you. to like with human DNA, and then they experiment on
How
it.
wild,
dude. What a fucking jump. Just that alone, where it's like, oh, whoa, dude, I think something's talking back to us. Oh, whoa. Like, it's giving us like alien DNA, bro. Like, it's like I wouldn't jump into like if they're telling us to splice it with human DNA, let's do that experiment. Like, why would you? And it goes crazy.
Shit.
So, like the one experiment that, it survives, it's like that crazy notion, like thing where it's like it grows up super fast. And so like within, a few like months, it's like, 12 years old, and then like, grows into like a 20 something year old, like really fucking quick. And, and it's just, there's so many, like there's some crazy scenes. There's like I feel like it almost had to be like an Alien homage, where there's a scene where Syl, the character that you kind of is the alien hybrid, is like, she's being sought from like this group. One of the members of that group is like an empath, so he like feels her feelings. But there's this whole shot where she like drives her tongue through this dude, and like I just remember then and now I still think, like, I was like, that reminds me so much of like the Alien, mouth in the mouth, where it's like right through the back of your skull.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because H.R. Geiger worked on the extraterrestrial aspect of Syl, and one of his complaints with the movie is that he felt like it to him it felt too much like Alien. So I can totally understand why you feel that way. But yeah, dude, like you said, it's just like, what a wild ass fucking thing to jump to. And then obviously, they realize the error of their way. They try to kill her. She escapes, and all hell breaks loose. She reproduces. But her alien form is amazing. And this is one of those movies too that I think is super solid. And besides the obvious likenesses to Alien, I think it's a pretty creative movie in its own right.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, I just that's kind of interesting that Geiger thought that, but like I think it there's little things that remind me of Alien personally, but I think it kind of has its own place, Species, you know what I mean?
Totally.
But and of course the ending where it's like the story continues on, because like part of Syl's body or it ends up like devouring a rat or something like that, or no, it's like a rat is like eating it, and then turns into like this hybrid and then creature. Yeah. And so you're just like, oh shit, it ain't over.
But yeah, her design in her alien form is pretty solid. There's some good deaths, but it's also where you mentioned, like, I remember This came out in 95. That first time I saw it, I was probably 10 or 11, and I watched it in that same, being a horny young boy, where I was like, oh man, this Natasha Hendridge is hot, but it's more than that. But
oh, absolutely, it's so much more than that. Like, no.
It has a good so it was produced by Frank Mancuso Jr., who worked on Friday the 13th franchise. It's the cast is pretty solid. It's got Ben Kingsley, Michael Madsen, Alfred Molina, Forrest Whitaker.
Yeah.
And here's an interesting tidbit for you. So the alien Syl voice is done by Frank Welker.
What?
Yeah.
What? No. Yeah, dude. It is like, I'm glad you mentioned the cast, because it is like a wildly good cast if you think about like that time period. Like, yeah, I don't know. I just can't say it enough. Have you seen
this?
The sequels?
Have you seen the sequel, the second one?
I don't think so.
Yeah. So I remember having like it was like a random like one of my relatives like bought it for me for like my birthday or Christmas one year. Because if I remember, it was straight to video, and it's like essentially a similar plot, but instead of a female this time, it's a male. And he's like an astronaut that kind of like J. Jonah Jameson's son bringing Venom back to Earth situation.
Yeah.
Like this astronaut goes up to space and brings back, gets infected, and then he's the one that's going around and trying to impregnate all these women to bring about. But Natasha Hendridge is in the sequel, and there's like a scene or two where she's trying to hunt him down to kill him because of the threat that he's trying to bring upon humanity, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But it's bad. Cool. It's nowhere near as good as Species, because like I said, I think it's a pretty creative, interesting, and it's done well. You know what I mean?
I agree. I mean, I don't think we have very many solid like alien movies to choose from in terms of like, some of these years. But Species was one that like definitely is. It's a cool ride. I don't know if like. I feel like not everybody might agree with it, but I still think it's a solid fucking alien banger. But what else we got from 95? So
there's this really weird movie called The Fear, and it's about like a killer wooden mannequin.
Oh.
Yeah, I've never actually seen it, but I remember it's one of those movies that I remember seeing. Like when I was living in Missouri and going to the movie store all the time, always seeing the cover and being like intrigued by it.
I like wooden mannequin / puppet killer movies. So
yeah, so do I. We also had Clive Barker's Lord of Illusions. It's pretty solid.
With Scott Bakula, that's right.
Scott what a name, dude.
I know.
But I'm gonna save my last couple shout outs until we're done. So I'm just gonna hop into my next pick, which is a very divisive movie. And when I say the title, people will understand why, but I'm talking about Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers, that came out in 1995. And this is one of those movies that I feel like, nowadays even more so, ever since like they released, because there's like 3 different cuts of this movie, but ever since they released like the director's cut, that more people have come around to it and have come to appreciate it for what it was. But it's wild to me that it's one of those movies that was disliked so bad that Halloween H2O came along and completely retconned it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it is.
Why do you think that? Why do you think that is though?
That's a good question. Because
what about this made it so worse than the other stuff?
Because Halloween 4, 5, and 6 were, and this is the capper of like the Cult of Thorn trilogy. Where they tried to establish that, because one of the best parts about the original is just like, here's this guy, no one knows why he's doing what he's doing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I feel
what's driving him,
Yeah. We didn't need to find that out. I'm still a fan of 4, 5, and 6. I'm a fan of all of the Halloween movies except for Resurrection. But it's one of those things where we didn't necessarily need to know. You know what I mean? And so, like I said, this movie, I think another part of it was due to the all the troubles that came in production. Was like I mentioned, there was multiple versions of the film. Like, while they were filming it, the production company wanted the original cut, and the distributors wanted who they had incorporated reshoots and additional material, and ultimately Dimension Films won, and that's the movie that was released. And then I mentioned that there's like a producer's cut. So there's the theatrical cut, producer's cut, and director's cut. And the movie that they got to theaters is drastically different than what it was going to be. I think that has part to do with it. I also think another thing that has to do with it is the fact that it was supposed to be the end of this trilogy, and they kill off they kill off a fan favorite character at the very beginning of the movie. You know what I'm talking about. Why am I blanking on her goddamn name right now? Danielle Harris played her.
Oh, it's Jamie?
Wow, thank you. Yeah, they kill off Jamie right at the beginning, and it's not only that, but it's a different actress. But I don't know. There are parts of the movie that are good too. I thought it was cool that they brought back Tommy Doyle.
That's what I was gonna say. I always loved that, like that they tried to bring back Tommy. But it is just super random. How like. Yeah, I don't know. Like just the whole, like, was it like Tommy, revealing that he, the Tommy telling everybody that about the curse. I just think it's like, why the fuck is Tommy the one that's doing this? That's also the thing, But the curse itself, which is like what? It's like, it says it right here. Long ago, one child from each tribe chosen to bear the curse of thorn must sacrifice its next of kin on the night of Samhain.
So
I don't know. Like I don't like that much.
Right. And I think that's another thing too, is where 4 and 5, like you saw the symbol on his hand, and then and at the end of 5, the man in black shows up and busts him out of jail. But it's not like something that is so heavily in the movie. It's just Michael going around killing, Loomis trying to stop him, and this town that's caught in the chaos. And in this movie, they tried to establish all this wild shit, and it just did not. I don't think it hit.
I mean, it's like you were saying, I think earlier, where it's like, the Halloween movies are generally fun to watch either way, but it's just this one's like the one that really stretches it, if you ask me.
And like I said, as far as to when H2O came out, they completely retconned it, because also in the I forget if it's the 4th or the 5th one, but you learn through like a small little scene where a character's listening to a radio that Laurie's dead. You know what I mean? So it's just like I feel like they just really like put themselves in a corner, and I absolutely love Halloween H2O. But then again, there are parts of this movie that I like Michael's absolutely fucking brutal. There's a lot of really cool scenes with blue lighting. It's Donald Pleasance's last film role.
Is it really?
So he got to go out playing the character that arguably made him famous.
Yeah,
so that was
Dr.
cool.
Loomis.
Yeah, I like I said, I enjoy it for what it is. It's one of those movies where I never had high expectations for it, so I don't go in expecting to be blown away.
Fair enough.
I just go in expecting to see some cool kills, some cool lighting. But yeah, I just think that they tried to do way too much, and it just didn't pan out the way. And like I said, part of that's due to the production and everything. But what is your opinion on this movie?
I mean, I don't really have like a very thorough opinion on it. I would say that it's probably one of like the bottom of my list, or the bottom, in terms of like the Halloween movies. Not like the absolute bottom, probably, but I don't know. Like, I mean, you always convince me to rewatch these movies. That's like the thing. It's like we always like start talking about it, and I'm like, man, he's describing like all this blue lighting and like Michael killing, and I'm like, man, like maybe I need to give it another go. Like
Absolutely.
I feel like some of these sequels I can dismiss too quickly, and they become background movies too fast when it's like, man, maybe I should really pay attention to it.
Okay.
But I just remember being so turned off by like the random storyline that I was just like, okay. But again, now I find myself in this position where it's like, I don't want to trash talk it. If I'm going to turn around and like watch it in a couple of days, it'd be like, oh, that was fucking cool, actually.
Yeah. I don't think it's as bad as it. I don't think it deserves all of the hate that it gets. So.
Fair enough. I mean,
like I said, Halloween Resurrection is what you think of when you think of an absolute shit Halloween movie, and rightfully so.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, not the strongest sequel, but
no.
I don't know. I mean, it's what am I trying to say? It's not like the only like rough sequel that came out this year though, in 95. Like it's like it was like the year of like really hit or miss sequels, I feel like, because like we mentioned, there's the Leprechaun 3, which we've talked about, like, because it's so juicy, we'll say.
Mm-hmm.
And like the Candyman, the Children of the Corn, there's like a Howling sequel, which is like that's one that always surprises me when it pops up, where it's just like there's
true
like legit
so many.
There's
more of them.
Yeah, no, for real. like this one's like the 7th Howling movie. That's fucking crazy.
They could have stopped at 2. Like the first one is, we had an episode about it. We talked about it, and I was very surprised with how good it was. But yeah, they could have they didn't need to make more of them.
Oh, and then there's the 1995 Village of the Damned. Yeah,
which gets a lot of hate.
Yeah. Christopher Reeve, Mark Hamill.
Reeves, yeah. Yeah, that's a great cast.
Like directed by John Carpenter.
Yeah, that's one of those movies that he that like this is one of those movies that they talk about, like this is where his career started to take like a downturn. Was yeah.
Eesh. All right.
Well, what you got one more pick, right?
I do, and I'm actually very embarrassed by this. So the movie that I picked is not the movie that I was thinking about when I picked it.
Oh my God, here we go. This is gonna be good.
So the movie I picked was The Prophecy, starring Christopher Walken.
Okay.
It's kind of like a like a demon angel kind of centered. It's like like a biblical kind of centered movie. It's not bad. It's just not the movie I was thinking of when I picked it. The movie I was thinking of when I picked it was a different Christopher Walken movie.
Okay, so before you continue with what you're going to say, I'm really not that familiar with Prophecy. I feel like it's one of those movies that I've watched in passing, but I really am not very familiar with. And then going through and reading the plot, I was just like, maybe I haven't seen this. But what was the movie you were thinking of?
The Dead Zone. So just because they're both like, I don't know why I was like thinking like, I just like for some reason I was thinking of like, I don't know why. It's like I was just okay. This is how I can only describe it. And when I was younger, I would always confuse Radiohead and Rage Against the Machine for no apparent reason.
Okay.
And that's how I feel about these two movies right now. Like I really just thought that like for some reason that this was The Dead Zone, which is a fucking awesome movie.
Yeah, Dead Zone is super solid.
It's super solid.
I absolutely agree.
But The Prophecy, I can't really like. I honestly, I mean, I feel like I've seen it like once, maybe twice. I'm not really big on like biblical fantasy, scary, thrillers or whatever. I think that's kind of like whatever. But I mean, that being said, this movie is like one of those movies that like it spawned like a number of sequels also for some reason. You know what I mean? Like there's some merit there, I guess. But like I said, I don't really have much to say on it because I really just didn't think I didn't think that one through. I feel like a dummy. But there's
I was looking at the cast is pretty interesting though, because it has Christopher Walken, it has Virginia Madsen, who's from Candyman. Viggo Mortensen is in it.
Viggo Mortensen. Oh my god.
Adam Goldberg is in it, and then Elias Koteas, who most people obviously associate with Casey Jones.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know, man. I was just reading it, and I was like, it doesn't sound like something that I would find myself like seeking out and watching.
Yeah.
I feel bad if there's people that are listening that are. And maybe it is one of those movies that I need to watch, and maybe I'll feel differently about it. Maybe I'll be surprised by it. So I don't mean any ill will when I say that. Yeah,
I mean, yeah, exactly. It was popular enough to like merit something. So there was like, something about it. But I just, like I said, I rightly can't speak to it. I'm just kind of I'm literally just realizing that. So I feel kind of like a dingus at the moment, live on a recording.
It's okay. Hey, this is what I'm gonna say. You were honest, and you could have sat here and bullshitted through it, and instead you decided to be honest, and that's really cool. So,
yeah. But that being said, there's probably like a couple other movies that we could like shout out and stuff from this year when you look at this list of when you look at a solid like all the horror movies that did come out.
I got a couple more. And then you can hopefully I don't say any that you were going to shout out, but I have two more that I want to shout out, and then you can finish off before I hop into my last pick. But I wanted to shout out there was another remake of Piranha in this year. It's one of those movies it's had like 3 different remakes, and then also another Stephen King adaptation, which is another one of those that is one of the most least regarded King adaptations. It has Robert Englund in it, and it's called The Mangler, and I think it's mainly because it's one of those short stories. It's based about an industrial press at a laundry place that takes on a mind of its own, and in the short story it gets a taste of human blood, and then at the end of the story as wild as the image sounds, it busts off of its foundation and busts out into the city. You know, it's one of those ideas of King had where he can turn a random item into something sinister, but it's not one of those that would be easy to translate to a movie and make it not ridiculous.
Fair. Yeah, well, apparently that one had like 2 sequels, or also The Mangler, which is crazy to me. But
yeah, The Mangler, like Reborn, and then yeah. I guess one of them. This is hilarious. I guess, and I apologize if I steal your thunder, and this is what you're going to say, but apparently one of them came out and it was a Mangler movie about how the Mangler moved to the advent of computers and was able to like spread this virus around computers or something like that.
Oh no, Y2K, man. That's fucking wild. No, I didn't realize that. That's funny. Yeah, that I was gonna mention Piranha for sure, but yeah, I'm kind of interested in checking out The Mangler because it's a Tobe Hooper movie. Like, also on top of that. And that's you know how we just talked about how Village of the Damned is like regarded as a downward trend for Carpenter. The Mangler is one of those movies that's associated with like Tobe Hooper's slump and him losing his grasp on being a good filmmaker, which is unfortunate. Bummer.
Because they both have such awesome movies in their filmography, so it's a shame when something like that, where it's like one movie can be like, oh, he's lost touch, you know.
It's like, it's kind of a hard blow. But I mean, but you know, other than that, there's like just a hodgepodge. You know, almost every year that something we haven't mentioned so far is that there's another witchcraft movie, and I'm not super familiar with that franchise, but I just wanted to know because it stood out to me. This like 1995, the 7th movie in that series came out. No, it's another one where it's like, holy shit, man! Like, how much time do they spend making witchcraft movies?
Because are you talking about the franchise Witchcraft or the franchise Witchboard? Because throughout the 90s, there's multiple sequels for each.
Yeah, I've seen Witchboard, but no, I like Witchcraft has like apparently like the 7th movie that year, but Witchboard again was sort of like, I mean, I don't feel like it's a property that needed like a sequel. It's just, but it does happen and happens apparently a few more times. So I don't know.
I really haven't seen any of those, to be honest.
Yeah, I feel you. But what would be your final pick out of 95?
So I feel like we don't go an episode of these without me talking about an anthology. So and keeping up with that trend, I'm talking about an anthology that is actually really solid and one of my favorite anthologies, Tales from the Hood. Directed by Rusty Cundiff and executive produced by Spike Lee. And one of the more interesting things about this movie is that, you know, it's got a wraparound segment and 4 segments, and they're all like urban themed stories, you know, based on like abuse, gang violence, racism, corrupt police, and I just think that it's such a solid movie. There's only one segment, the last segment, that I think is a little bit weak, but the rest are super solid, and it's one of those movies that I can watch at any time and just be entertained by the performances, the segments, the social commentary, just everything about it.
Yeah.
What's your opinion?
I haven't watched the original in years, but like, it's one of those I've watched a few times, and same sentiments where it's sort of just like every time I've watched it, it's been just as good as the first time I've watched it. You know what I mean? Where it's like, and very rarely do things like really have great repeat play like that, but this is one of those where you can definitely fucking enjoy it every time.
That's what I'm saying.
And I like that. Kind of like what you mentioned, the general themes are sort of interesting. The idea in boys don't get bruised, that the kid is like getting abused, but it's like a monster. It's like a monster story, but like the idea is the underlying tone of like, what kind of like, home life some people have, sort of.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting.
Sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good.
I apologize. The cool thing about that one too is that David Alan Grier, was more known for comedy, and he plays this totally ruthless piece of shit alcoholic that beats his girlfriend's son. You know what I mean? And he's the monster, which I think is cool because that's one of those things that happens all the time, and it's probably not the first instance where a kid considers someone like that a monster. But yeah, you don't see it coming. You think that this kid is just spinning these stories about this monster that comes and sees him in his room every night.
Yeah.
But I just love the ending where he crumples up the piece of paper.
Oh my god, dude, he crumples the paper, then he crumples Carl, man. Like
he's like,
yeah, dude. It's so fucking good.
It's amazing.
Yeah, dude.
It is amazing. And then there's the like I mentioned, the last segment is kind of the weakest. It's just about this serial killer who's a hardened criminal. He's a gang member. He's a piece of shit, and he's on he's in jail for murder, and he gets picked to do this these experimental trials, and if he completes them, he'll get put free. And it's like he gets tortured. There's like psychological effects where he learns the actions, he learns the consequences of his actions. There's like one of the cool parts about it is there's these like scenes where he's like in a deprivation chamber and he sees all these like cuts of like KKK members and lynchings and gang violence. But at the end, he still won't accept responsibility for his actions. So he gets taken back to the moment he gets shot, but the outcome is different this time. And the third one, we'll talk about it more in a second, but the third one follows into the wraparound segment. But the other two segments are super strong. The first one's about this black rookie cop who on his first night on the force, he is with these three white officers who pull over a black man who is like what's the word I'm looking for? He's a civil rights activist, and they beat him to death. They plant drugs on him. And a year later, the black police officer feels bad for not, speaking up, and ends up the activist that died. He gets resurrected. He comes back from the grave to brutally kill these three police officers. And the last one even gets this gnarly where all these it's like by a homeless camp, and all these needles get fucking like projectile blasted into him, and then he becomes part of the mural. And that's gnarly.
Fucking gnarly. There is doesn't one of them get the zombie fucking rips off one of the dude's heads at one point, I think, and in that segment. It's like there's some cool moments in that segment for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's a great way, because you have the opening the opening of the wraparound segment where there's these three gang members that go to a funeral home to buy drugs off of Clarence Williams, who is absolutely fantastic in these wraparound segments. And then in the second, so that's a good first segment. Is it's called Rogue Cop Revelation. Then the second segment, as you talked about, boys don't get bruised, and the third one's great. So it has Corbin Burnson in it from where we know him from The Dentist and Dentist 2.
The dentist is in.
Yeah. Oh my God. And he plays it's called KKK Comeuppance, and he plays this super racist Southern senator who is in the middle of election, and he's living in an old slave plantation, and it's absolutely great. There's like this mural of all these dolls, and they come to life, and we learn that all these dolls contain the souls of the tortured slaves that the slave owner, and they come back and they fucking kill them, and it's great.
Yeah, dude. You love a good doll horror movie, man. Like,
yeah.
No, it's a cool segment,
absolutely,
man.
Dude.
And seeing Corbin Burnson in anything is kind of like a treat now. Like, you know what I mean?
And he hams it up, like, in this role, dude. Like, he plays this smarmy schmuck who you want him to get his what's coming to him, essentially. But the wraparound segment's really cool too, because I mentioned at the end of the last segment, Crazy K is the name of the guy, and he gets transported back to the moment where he gets shot, and we learn that the people that shot him are these three gang members that are at the funeral home trying to buy the drugs. And in this great twist ending, we learn that they're dead, and that their souls are trapped there by this guy that was telling these stories. And it turns out that the funeral parlor is hell, and that he is Satan. It's so great.
So fucking good. Well, there's that, like the shot with like, the whole idea of like, their own corpses, they discover their own fucking bodies and shit. And they were just like, oh no, like that's it. Like, yeah, but that whole that ultimate twist though of like, no, you're in hell right now. It's fucking crazy. Yeah, it's a good one, man, and that also eventually spawned a couple like follow-up anthologies. And that's in that vein,
they're a little weaker, but they're still interesting.
Fair. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like a good watch though. Like,
oh shit, yeah,
every time. Yeah, I mean, like I was saying at the beginning of the pod, like these few years were kind of like, there's just kind of a hodgepodge of things, really. Like nothing super exceptional, except for like, honestly, I mean, the Good Son was an exceptional movie in a lot of ways, and I think that Leprechaun is the other one that really stands out as like this sparked something, you know what I mean? Like in a good way.
True.
But, yeah, like I don't know, 93 and 95, that was the lull, I feel like.
Yeah, 100%.
But do you have any last minute like movies off the top of your head or anything like that?
Not that I can think of, man. Obviously, once again, it's one of those things where, we're gonna miss some stuff. We're not gonna mention everything. Yeah. So if we did, if there's something that we didn't mention, you know what I mean? We apologize. You know what I mean? We're not perfect.
Yeah.
But basically, the whole point of us doing this is just to shine light on more horror and maybe mention something that someone hasn't heard in a while, or maybe revitalize a movie that someone was a really big fan of and hasn't watched in a while. So
yeah, exactly. And we'll be doing a movie in between this one and the last round of the 90s. So get ready for that, and keep buckled in for the rest of the 90s, because we do have some stuff to talk about in those last few years for sure. Well, I guess I feel like we've kind of covered the bases. Do you have any final thoughts on horror in general? Any last words?
No, I'm just excited. You know what I mean? Like I said, Nope's coming out this weekend. I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
There's just some good. There's just there's always there's some good shit was just dumped on Shudder. There's always there's always something to watch, and there's just we'll talk more about it in future episodes, but there's more other horror movies besides Nope that are coming out near the end of the year that I'm really looking forward to. And it's just I'm always reminded of why I love this genre, and why I'm such a fan. So
hell yeah. All right, well, we'll leave it there. And I feel like David usually says it, but watch more horror, man. All right. All right. We'll see you on the next pod.